Sweetheart, when you said they're here...
The dark curse behind Poltergeist. What happened to the stars who never escaped the screen? Hollywood has always had its shadows. But some shadows don't just linger, they devour. In 1982, Poltergeist crashed into cinemas like a supernatural storm. Produced by Steven Spielberg and directed by Tobe Hooper, the film told the chilling tale of a suburban family haunted by vengeful spirits. It wasn't just another horror movie. It was the horror movie, a box office giant, a cultural phenomenon, a landmark in supernatural storytelling. Audiences were terrified. Critics were awed. And the cast? A band of bright, promising stars catapulted into Hollywood's orbit. But then something strange began to happen. One by one, the brightest lights of Poltergeist began to dim. And not just through fading fame. Through death. Real, haunting, inexplicable death. By 1988, when the trilogy closed, for actors, all with pivotal roles in the franchise, were gone. Not in retirement. Not in scandal. Gone. They called it the Poltergeist curse. Whispers grew louder. Was it just a string of coincidences? Or was the horror behind the scenes more chilling than anything written in the script? This isn't a ghost story. This is Hollywood's darkest mystery. Because Poltergeist didn't just break records. It broke lives. Young stars who should have flourished were suddenly silenced. Promising careers cut short. Dreams buried in early graves. So today, we peel back the screen and ask, what really happened to the stars of Poltergeist? Who were they, beneath the makeup and the camera lights? What dreams did they carry onto that cursed set? What secrets did they take to their graves? And most of all, if the movie was fiction, why does it feel like the curse was real? Subscribe now, because what you're about to hear isn't just the story of a film. It's the story of ambition, tragedy, and the chilling reminder that in Hollywood, even your biggest role might be your last. Now, let's begin with the first to fall, a rising star silenced before her light could truly shine. Dominique Dunne, the first to fall. She was the beautiful older sister in Poltergeist, the teenage girl with attitude and heart. But Dominique Dunne wasn't just playing a role, she was stepping into what should have been the beginning of a long, luminous career. Instead, it would become her epitaph. Born on November 23, 1959, into a family of prominence and culture, Dominique was the daughter of famed novelist and screenwriter Dominique Dunne. She was raised in Beverly Hills, groomed in privilege, but she was no spoiled heiress. Dominique had grit. She studied acting passionately, attending classes in Colorado and refining her craft with a seriousness that stood out even in a city filled with dreamers. She was just 21 when she was cast in Poltergeist. Her character, Dana Freeling, wasn't the star of the show, but she added a dimension of realism to the family. Her on-screen charisma felt effortless, raw, teenage vulnerability fused with an edge of rebellion. You didn't forget Dana Freeling, and you didn't forget Dominique Dunne. Hollywood didn't either. More roles were coming. She had just signed on for a new series, and producers were calling. Her star was rising fast. Too fast for fate to catch up, or so it seemed. In reality, her personal life was spiraling into something darker than any horror script. Behind the scenes, Dominique was trapped in a toxic relationship with John Thomas Sweeney, a sous chef at a trendy LA restaurant. Friends and family warned her. She tried to leave. She moved out. Changed locks. But obsession doesn't listen. On October 30, 1982, just months after Poltergeist had electrified theaters, Sweeney showed up at her new home. He begged. They argued. Then he strangled her in her driveway while neighbors listened helplessly. Dominique never regained consciousness. She died on November 4, 5 days later, at the age of 22. The trial became a media circus. Her killer was convicted, but not of murder. He served less than 4 years. Hollywood was outraged. Her father wrote scathing exposes. Her mother became a victims' rights advocate. But justice never caught up. Dominique was gone, and the industry she loved barely had time to embrace her. And yet, even in death, she left a legacy. A chilling first domino in what would become known as the Poltergeist curse. Some call it coincidence. Others whisper that the film, so immersed in real skeletons and spiritual folklore, carried something beyond the script. But Dominique Dunne was not a ghost, she was a blazing comet snuffed out just as the sky began to open for her. Her final film would go on to terrify millions. But her final days remain the true horror. Not crafted by writers. Not captured on set. A real-life tragedy that still haunts the industry more deeply than any cinematic specter. Heather O'Rourke, the child who never left the light. You remember her voice before you remember her name. They're here, just 2 words. But they etched themselves into cinematic history, whispered through static, becoming one of the most iconic lines in horror. Behind that chilling moment stood a little girl with white blonde hair, bright eyes, and a voice that lingered long after the credits rolled. Her name was Heather O'Rourke. Born on December 27, 1975, in San Diego, Heather was just 5 years old when a chance encounter at MGM Studios changed everything. Steven Spielberg, searching for the perfect child to anchor his supernatural tale, spotted her in the studio commissary. She wasn't there for an audition. She was there with her mother and sister. But Spielberg saw something. A presence. An innocence. A spark. Within days, she was cast as Carol Ann Freeling, the soul of Poltergeist. Filming began in 1981. Heather was 6. And she was mesmerizing. Critics praised her for a performance that felt far beyond her years. Audiences connected instantly. Carol Ann wasn't just a character. She was the heart of the story, the fragile hope amidst chaos, the daughter every parent would fight for. Heather reprised the role in Poltergeist 2 and Poltergeist 3, growing up with the franchise and becoming its emotional core. But behind the screen, something was wrong. In 1987, Heather began showing signs of illness, facial swelling, stomach pain, vomiting. Doctors misdiagnosed her with Crohn's disease. She was treated, medicated, pushed forward. She kept acting. She showed up on set, professional, poised, but tired. In January 1988, things took a horrifying turn. Heather collapsed at home. She was rushed into emergency surgery. What doctors discovered was terrifying, a congenital intestinal stenosis, a severe bowel obstruction that had gone undetected for years. Sepsis had already set in. Heather O'Rourke died on February 1, 1988. She was 12 years old. The industry was stunned. A young actress, beloved by millions, gone in the blink of an eye. Her final film, Poltergeist 3, was completed without her. The ending was re-edited. Some scenes were res-hot with a body double. But no amount of cutting could erase her absence. The soul of the series had vanished. Rumors spread like wildfire. Was it medical negligence? A misdiagnosis? Or something darker? Some whispered about the curse again. Others blamed the pressures of Hollywood on a fragile child. One thing was certain, Heather had given everything she had to her role, perhaps too much. Her death transformed Poltergeist from a blockbuster trilogy into a chilling Hollywood mystery. Not just about ghosts, but about a child who became a star, and never got to grow up. Heather's grave in Westwood Memorial Park bears a heartbreaking inscription, "Beloved daughter, sweet angel." But for fans of the series, she is more than a memory. She is the voice that echoes from the screen. The girl who never left the light. Julian Beck, the face of death himself. There are villains, and then there is Reverend Henry Kane. Gaunt. Hollow-eyed. With a smile that sent chills down your spine and a voice that made the walls tremble, Julian Beck didn't just play evil, he inhabited it. His performance in Poltergeist 2, The Other Side, didn't feel like acting. It felt like a transmission from the underworld itself. And perhaps, in some terrifying way, it was. Julian Beck was born on May 31, 1925, in the heart of New York City. Long before he terrified audiences, he was a rebel, a poet, painter, and radical thinker. He co-founded the Living Theater in 1947 with his wife, Judith Molina. The group wasn't just avant-garde. It was dangerous, anti-establishment, revolutionary. Beck's life was steeped in protest, performance, and the raw expression of truth, no matter how uncomfortable. When Hollywood called, it wasn't for a hero. It was for a ghost. A preacher. A spirit of decay that clung to the living. Poltergeist 2 needed something otherworldly. Julian Beck was the answer. He was 59 years old when he stepped into the role of Reverend Cain. Emaciated and spectral, he didn't need makeup. His face, already etched by illness, became part of the horror. Unbeknownst to many on set, Julian was dying. He had been diagnosed with stomach cancer 2 years earlier. Treatment had failed. He was wasting away. But he refused to stop. He filmed Poltergeist 2 while in constant pain, channeling every ounce of agony into his performance. You can see it in his eyes, a sadness, a rage, a chilling authenticity that no prosthetic could replicate. Cain wasn't a character. He was a warning. Julian Beck died on September 14, 1985, before Poltergeist 2 even hit theaters. He never got to witness the fear he inspired, never saw how his final role would become one of the most unforgettable villains in horror history. His death was eerily timed. He portrayed death and then succumbed to it. Another actor claimed by the Poltergeist legacy. Some say he knew. That he embraced it. After all, he'd spent his entire life confronting mortality, challenging systems, and turning pain into performance. But there's something haunting about watching Poltergeist 2 today. As Cain sings through the screen, "God is in his holy temple," it doesn't feel like a line. It feels like a prophecy. A requiem. Julian Beck didn't die because of the role. But the role became his farewell. A man who once stormed theaters with anarchic fire, fading out not with silence, but with a scream so powerful it echoes decades later. And perhaps that's the true curse, not that these actors died, but that they became eternal, frozen in frames of terror, in roles that blurred fiction and fate. Will Samson, the shaman who couldn't stop the storm. When Poltergeist 2 needed spiritual protection, it found Will Samson. Towering at 6 feet 7 inches, with a presence that felt carved from ancient earth, he played Taylor, the Native American shaman who battles the evil spirit of Reverend Cain. But Samson wasn't just acting. He believed in what he was doing. And he feared something sinister was following the production. Born on September 27, 1933, in Okmulgee, Oklahoma, Will Samson was a proud member of the Muskogee Creek Nation. Before Hollywood knew him, he was a rodeo star, a championship-level bronco rider, and a painter of considerable talent. Acting wasn't his first love, it was a calling that came unexpectedly, and for a time, transformed him into one of the most respected Native American figures in film. He burst into the mainstream with One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, 1975, playing Chief Bromden. A role so deeply connected to silence and power that audiences felt his presence even when he said nothing. Hollywood took notice. Roles followed. But Will Samson never sold out. He refused parts that degraded Native culture and often used his platform to fight for indigenous representation. When Poltergeist 2 cast him as Taylor, it wasn't just another job. Samson was uneasy. Rumors of a curse had already begun to swirl. Cast members spoke of strange occurrences, of on-set injuries, of a darkness lingering around the production. Samson, deeply spiritual and deeply cautious, took it seriously. He performed an exorcism on the set. According to crew members, Samson stayed late one night after filming Wrapped. Alone, he walked through the soundstage and conducted a purification ceremony, calling on the spirits to leave in peace. He didn't do it for the cameras. He did it because he believed the cast was in danger. But even shamans bleed. Will Sampson had suffered from scleroderma, a chronic degenerative disease that hardened his skin and damaged his lungs. By the mid-1980s, his condition had worsened. In 1987, he underwent a heart-lung transplant in a desperate attempt to survive. His towering frame and weakened health made the procedure more dangerous than most. Complications came swiftly. He died on June 3, 1987, at just 53 years old. Some whispered he had absorbed the darkness. That trying to cleanse the curse had claimed him. Others saw only tragedy, a powerful man, a spiritual protector, brought down by a disease no ritual could cure. His death deepened the mythology. Now, even the man who tried to fight the curse had fallen to it. And yet, Samson's legacy is more than whispers and superstition. He stood for dignity, for representation, for balance between the sacred and the cinematic. On screen, he was Taylor, the brave spiritual warrior. Off-screen, he was Will, the artist, the activist, the man who tried to hold back the storm. He may not have stopped the curse, but he faced it. And perhaps that is what makes his story not just tragic, but heroic. The curse that never left, a legacy written in shadows. The Poltergeist trilogy was never just a story about ghosts. It was a story about innocence and fear, about families torn apart by unseen forces, both on screen and off. And as the years passed, the line between fiction and fate blurred until no one could deny it. Something tragic, something chilling, seemed to cling to this franchise like a shadow that refused to lift. Dominique Dunne, Heather O'Rourke, Julian Beck, Will Sampson. 4 names. 4 lives. 4 tragedies. Each of them brought something unforgettable to the screen. Dominique was fire, a rising star silenced just as the world was beginning to listen. Heather was light, the child whose voice became horror's heartbeat, yet never got to grow into her own. Julian was darkness, a man who stared death in the face and transformed it into art. Will was wisdom, a protector, a believer, someone who tried to cleanse what he felt he could not control. None of them lived to see old age. None of them got the careers they deserved. And yet all of them left behind echoes. Scenes that still unnerve us. Smiles we can't forget. Lines that ring out decades later like prophecies. Hollywood, of course, moved on. It always does. But audiences haven't. Because Poltergeist wasn't just cursed. It was human. It was built on raw talent, fragile lives, and stories far more terrifying than anything in the script. So what do we make of this? Was it just misfortune, cruel timing, and the chaos of life? Or was something truly haunted behind the scenes? The truth, like the spirits in the film, may never be fully known. But one thing is certain, while the Freeling family escaped their haunted house, the real cast never truly escaped the haunting. Not in life. Not in death. Not even now. As long as the film endures, and it will endure, so will the legacy of the actors who gave their all, and in some cases, gave everything. Some succeeded. Some never got the chance. Some left at their peak. Others faded under the weight of tragedy. But all of them became part of something larger, a myth, a mystery, a cinematic ghost story that refuses to die. And that's why we're here. To remember not just what they did, but who they were. To give their stories the spotlight one more time. And maybe, in doing so, bring a little peace to a tale still haunted by silence. Subscribe to our channel if you want more stories like this, the ones Hollywood whispers about but never dares to truly tell. Because some films leave the screen. And some never let go.